Hello, and thank you for joining our session. So in this session, we are going to review management capabilities built into Windows 10, complemented by Windows Server and cloud service technologies. So if you are new to managing Windows 10, then this is the right session for you. If you're managing Windows clients already for a longer time, but you just got a little bit rusty, then you're attending the right session as well. So we are going to discuss all different choices you have when it comes to manage Windows clients, how you can manage what needs to be managed. My name is Heike Ritter. I'm from Germany. I'm now in Seattle. So not now, but I moved to Seattle. I'm a product marketing manager in the Windows team, and I'm not doing the session alone, so I'm joined by Samish.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for making the time and choosing our session today. So I'm an architect with our consulting organization. I own, the Windows client deployment, enterprise mobility, and those sorts of things related to Windows devices. So I'll let Heike have a little chat to you for a little bit more. No?
About what?
You're not talking? Oh. Okay, so what we're going to try and do today, we don't have an agenda slide, but we're going to break it down for you, and you're going to see the same slide repeatedly, and hopefully you'll try and get a sense of the approach that we're taking through this session. As Heike mentioned, some of the concepts we're covering are pretty basic. It's kind of Windows Management 101. Some of them are, a little bit deeper. And what I will ask is, you're more than welcome to ask us questions. The session is being recorded, so if you do have a question, please try and avail yourself to one of the microphones in the room, so everybody that watches the session later on can hear your question and our response to it. If we can answer it, if we can't, we'll take a note to try and get you an answer. And please come see us afterwards so we can get some contact details and we can get you an answer. All right?
Don't forget to mention the nice
pieces
you added
to
the slides.
Through the slide deck, what we don't actually have a reference slide at the end of the deck which kind of says, here's all the sessions for you to go and watch. So keep your eye out. You'll find down the bottom of some of those slides, you'll get a little ticker, a little animation come up. It will highlight a session name and the speaker or speakers. So when you get the deck, feel free to just scroll through the deck, grab the speaker's name, you can put it into the portal and grab all the details if they change. So that's one of the reasons why we omitted the room number, because we are getting a number of repeats of sessions as well as some sessions that are being moved. So I think for a long time, probably since about Windows for Workgroups, perhaps, maybe even a little bit earlier or thereabouts, Windows has really been targeted being the most manageable OS. Manageable locally, manageable remotely, and it's there to be able to ensure that your business needs are being met. And that's really been one of the key investments that Windows has had as a differentiator, and it still continues to have. So we understand that your business needs are changing. And therefore, we're looking to innovate in a lot of areas in the management space to be able to ensure that you can continue to meet your business needs. So through this session, we're going to walk you through what we think is an appropriate structure. If not, please give us the feedback. We definitely appreciate it. But we want to try and take you through the management choices that you have. So this is the slide that's going to get repeated. The way we're trying to structure the approach is that you have a device. That device has Windows 10 installed on it, so we'll refer to it either as Windows 10 directly or the operating system. And then you have this split deal that came in with Windows 8.1 and continues to be there with Windows 10, which is you've got this personal stack that's really governed by a personal identity. And we've structured it so that it's applications, which will have settings, or operating system settings as well, which are your personal settings, and then your personal data. On the corporate side, you have a corporate identity, corporate apps, settings, and your data as well. And so what we're going to walk through today is how that entire gray box, that management structure, applies to each one of these levels. So we're going to touch on items around deployment. We're going to touch around items on information protection, security. It's all management at the end of the day, and so we want to try and give you as comprehensive a view as we can in the 75 minutes we have. So let's try and look at what your management options are for these layers in the stack. Identity is the key part. Looking to the mobility solutions that you're all trying to implement. At the end of the day, mobility underpins it all. I beg your pardon, identity underpins it all. Without the identity, there really is no mobility, right? So it's the key thing. Today, it's Active Directory, and for the device, it's either domain joined or it's in a work group. So that's kind of splitting out the device identity, if you like. When you look to the Azure cloud capabilities, we've got Azure Active Directory and the Azure AD Join, which is now being introduced with Windows 10. We will talk a bit more about all of these as we go through it. And then in the management space that hangs on this identity and the device grouping is group policy. That's still tried and true and tested, and there will continue to be more new group policies introduced in Windows 10, as well as with AGPM, the ability to be able to script it. Configuration Manager, in the keynote yesterday, Brad Anderson did make mention of a new version of vNext and some service packs that will be coming out. There's some links through this deck relating to that content and the postings, as well as the download location for the preview of vNext. The big area is, well, MDM is the real investment in Windows 10 from a manageability point of view, but we've also introduced this concept of a WMI bridge, and I'll talk a bit about that later on. And then in the MDM space, Windows 10 is now more of a first-class citizen that's manageable by MDM. There have been significant investments and innovations in this space, and we'll touch on those through the deck as well. And we look at these two items. How do you do a new configuration, and how do you do initial provisioning of devices? We probably won't go into depth on the initial provisioning, but there are some sessions. I've got one later this afternoon at about 5, if you'd like to attend, which will cover some of the provisioning pieces as well as a few throughout the week. And then EAS, Exchange Active Sync, which has been around for quite some time, and PowerShell and WMI. So we're going to try and touch on all of these topics today, starting pretty soon. Just to kind of structure the actual products that we'll be talking about. We've got the Windows client, and it has probably the greatest number of manageability elements within it, from WMI to WinRM, which can leverage WMI. We've got PowerShell, we've got the Windows Update elements, AppLocker, PowerShell. So there's a whole slew of stuff that I'm sure everyone can read up there. So I won't go through them all, but we're going to cover those through our deck today. Then we introduce the next layer of management, which is the remote management, effectively. With just Windows Server, you've got Active Directory and the group policy elements, and then Windows Server update services to be able to deploy and manage updates to these devices. And then we look at server-side products that you can use to augment in an enterprise capability. There's System Center Configuration Manager, which also integrates with and leverages the WSUS, and of course the MDOP solution as well. So that's again another way of looking at it. And then you've got the cloud services. They can go directly to the client. And now with the Azure Active Directory join, that's an even greater manageability element that will be introduced with Windows 10. How many of you have actually tried the cloud domain join? Nope? One? Okay, so awesome. That means one demo will be relevant to almost everybody. So the way we're going to start this, we're going to kind of get into the depths of it now, is we're going to look at that corporate identity piece. There are two kind of choices with Windows 10. There's the traditional, which is your on-prem Active Directory, and your computer joins into that domain, and then there's an implicit trust between the device and the domain. That trust is then used to effectively broker all kinds of communication and manageability elements, as well as authentication and authorization. The signing in with an Active Directory account uses the Kerberos protocol, and that uses ticket granting tickets and the Kerberos, the KDC, the Kerberos, excuse me, the TLA is escaping me right now. And then we've got group policy and system center, which can then leverage that domain model to be able to manage the device. On the other hand, what we're introducing in Windows 10 is the Azure Active Directory element. In the same way, and I'm drawing it more as an analogy, a Windows 10 device will be able to perform a domain join into an Azure Active Directory. So the user must exist in that Azure Active Directory to be able to have the rights to join into that directory. The user is then able to sign in to that device. In Windows 8.1, you could only sign in with a Microsoft account, which was effectively a private account. Here, we're now enabling the ability to sign in with an Azure Active Directory account. And that will then expose effectively just one communication channel, if you choose, depending on the architecture that is implemented. And one of the features that Azure Active Directory will be introducing is the ability to roam settings with that identity as well. We'll disclose probably pretty soon what those settings will be and what capabilities will be available with the roaming feature. To enable single sign-on, that's one of the biggest challenges, right, is users inevitably will have the trusty black book, or they'll use some kind of password vault to be able to store all the passwords for their different accounts. So single sign-on is a big deal from a user's point of view. And what we're trying to enable with this is single sign-on to the enterprise applications as well as cloud-based services. So with that one identity, that one login, the user is able to log into pretty much any corporate service that is enabled for them. So just to look at what are the three different types or architectures that you can have. You could be born in the cloud, right? You could just have everything that you set up in the cloud. Your Azure Active Directory, the identity, any other services that depend on it, all cloud-based. So that's really an independent cloud identity. Then we look at the synchronized identity, which is you have an existing Active Directory on your on-premises, your users exist in it, but you want to replicate selected users and objects up to Azure Active Directory. We have a sync tool. We've had a few synchronization tools to enable that. There was Directory Sync. There was Azure Active Directory Sync. There is a new one coming out, which is the Azure AD Connect. And all of these tools are evolutions of a few other products that have been coming together. And the intent is really to be able to make it as seamless as possible to move your identities and selected other data from your on-premises Active Directory up to the cloud, as well as maintain a synchronization or selected synchronization between them. And that's what the Directory Sync and Password Sync box is illustrating there. When you do the synchronized identity, the user is actually being authorized in two locations, depending on what they're trying to access. So they will be authorized in Azure Active Directory to be able to access a cloud-based service, or if they're accessing something on-prem, the authentication will occur in your on-prem Active Directory. With the federated identity, the ADFS server, the Active Directory Federation Services solution, will allow all of that authentication to occur in one place. And that is typically been done with an ADFS server or servers in a farm configuration on premises in your data center. So that's really the three architectural options that you have around trying to introduce a single identity across the organization and achieve ultimately what we're really calling a common identity. So what I'm going to show you now is the cloud-only architecture, which will effectively allow a user who's got a new device, let's say they've purchased one out at your local, large electronics supplier, and they've basically unboxed that device. Alternatively, it could be a device that you have actually provided to the user, and we're going to go through what the out-of-box experience looks like. So what I have here is a Windows 10 technical preview client. It has just been built, and this is the first box that we effectively see. So what I do need to make sure, because I have just remembered, is to make sure that I'm actually connected to the internet. And I'm not. So that would have been a spectacular failure. Okay, we'll just give it a second to get its IP. So there are two ways to do this. I'm going to demonstrate the out-of-box experience. There's equally a way to do it from within the operating system once it's up and running. So we're going to go ahead and click on the Use Express settings in this instance. What I have pre-configured is an Azure Active Directory tenant in my Azure subscription, and I've created some users. That user, or the administrator, has also implemented Azure Active Directory Premium and has enabled multi-factor authentication for this user. So I will be using my phone to try and get a one-time password with the Azure multi-factor auth application. So when I get through this, if this is a personal device, then I will just click that the device belongs to me, and I'll go through what is a regular consumer-style setup. If I select that the device belongs to my company, what will now happen is it will ask me to log in. And I'm effectively going to be logging in with my corporate credentials, which in this instance is called creatively test user 1. Right? So we get a notification that says, hey, you're going to be enrolled with the organization. They're probably going to be able to control a few things on your device. So we click continue. And here's the prompt now. So I put in my credentials. And I put in my password. And we get it to sign in. So you'll see it's already detected that multi-factor authentication has been enabled for this user. I will unlock my phone. I'll grab the application. It's available on pretty much any device, so it's just a one-time password generator. And I grab that code and pop it in here.
Which is also available for consumer.
It is. Yes, you can use it for a personal Microsoft account as well. Mm-hmm. So that will go through, and that's it. That is effectively a cloud domain that has just occurred. In the background, in the Azure Active Directory tenant, there are a few things that need to be done, which is to enable the cloud domain join, and also to enable additional configuration that you may want to occur around, do you want to add other users out of the Azure Active Directory into the local admins group, right? So it's still preserving that same IT admin experience that you would have with a regular domain join. So we'll come back to that device later on. So that's really the key cloud identity piece that's new. Most of you understand the domain join and how identity works in a domain, so we've kind of skipped over that. If you do have questions, feel free to ask one around this or try and grab us after the session as well. So we're going to take a step up and go into Windows 10 itself now. So there's a session that's popped up down the bottom. Have a look for Tim's details and have a look at his session, either as a recording or actually I think it was this morning. So we're going to start fairly high level architecturally, and then we'll get into some of the other elements. So WMI, the Windows Management Instrumentation, which then became the Windows Management, another TLA is failing me. It was versioned up. It basically maintains backward compatibility with Windows Management Instrumentation. It's basically a database that resides in Windows that is managed by the system, and applications can subscribe to it or be providers to it. So it has three major components. You've got the providers and the managed objects. Those are effectively constructs of the physical elements within the operating system, or sorry, within the device, but they're also logical constructs of items that exist within the operating system. And all of these provide data, or they also provide methods as well to be able to exercise an action on them. So it really is very much, if you're familiar with coding, it's basically a class definition. Using COM and DCOM, it communicates with the WMI infrastructure that is comprised of two components. The WMI service, which effectively is a service that runs when Windows starts, and the WMI repository. That is the database that actually stores all of the, let's call it the telemetry data from the providers and managed objects, as well as provides responses through the WMI service to any of the management applications or scripts. And then we've got these WMI consumers. On that end, those are effectively the elements that will query or attempt to set or get parameters from within a WMI provider or a managed object. So what we're really looking at here is a construct that is based on the WBEM standard. And now if FLA is going to escape me, it's the Web-Based Enterprise Management Architecture or protocol. And it's basically an open standard that's managed by the DTMF, yet another FLA. And since it's based on open standards, these are all Microsoft's implementations, right? For most management applications that exist today, they are all WMI consumers. So they will use it to grab information, telemetry information, and also to configure systems. WinRM is the Windows Remote Management Protocol based on the on SOAP, on the SOAP protocol as well. So it's a one level higher, and it effectively allows the remote management of WMI. Now, there are security configurations that need to be performed on the client, and once those are set, it's basically a very firewall-friendly protocol that allows that transmission of traffic through to the trusted environment, which is effectively the domain in that instance. So WinRM is really how you can configure or perform actions on a device from a management system as well. So how many of you are PowerShell scripters? Awesome. Hopefully there'll be more after this.
Yeah.
It is effectively the way management is moving. I know I actually still do, I'll put my hand up, I still do edit VB scripts occasionally. I do deployment, so the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, VB script, so PowerShell is effectively there's everything that can be done with PowerShell. And if not, well, the big deal with PowerShell is that it's based on .NET. Everything in PowerShell is instantiation of .NET objects. So you can perform fairly complex tasks, and if you need to combine complex tasks into scripts, by all means, you can also write your own commandlets. So that's kind of where we start. PowerShell comprises these things called commandlets, and yes, it actually is spelled CMDlets. And they kind of follow this action, they're always hyphenated. So it's action object oriented. So it's get-item or start-service. Fairly self-explanatory, very easy to learn, and once you kind of get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to query what commandlets are available on the system, what PowerShell modules are available, and away you go. It's also very friendly to what you would usually run through a command processor, right? So in this instance, here's an example, ipconfig, pipe that to select string, and you're done. So you can still do that. There are some trickiness in the syntax sometimes, but you can get over it, right? You kind of work out what the syntax needs to be in PowerShell. The ampersand is a friendly character, and I'll leave that one, as homework if you like. And then there are these objects. So everything in PowerShell is instantiated as an object. It's a .NET object, and so you can perform, again, it exposes a whole lot of methods as well as properties, so you can query, take action on them as well. This command that I've pointed out here, which is the object pipeline, it's effectively being able to query for an object with a set of criteria and then put it into another process. A colleague of mine, when I was relatively new to PowerShell, I had about a 6 or 7 line script, and he turned around to a 1-line script. And that was just using that operator, the pipe operator, right? So you're effectively transferring objects into just different processing commands, and the output is effectively what you would end up with. So PowerShell as well has the ability to leverage what we discussed on the previous slide, right? The Windows Remote Management. So from a single console, you can effectively fan out to any number of devices and use PowerShell to query the WMI repository to be able to get any information that you need from the device or to execute actions on them as well. So I'm just going to run you through a really quick demo on remote PowerShell.
Oh, it's on mine?
Yes, thank you. So what we're going to do here is...
wait a second.
When we're connected. What I'm going to show you is the WMI elements, and it's all going to be done with PowerShell. So first we're going to connect to this one device here.
Screwed it up.
That's all right. There we go. Nope. Okay. So here we have Anne, who's logged onto this system. And we're going to run PowerShell on this device. So the first thing is PowerShell is relatively privileged, so it will ask us to elevate in this instance. Now what PowerShell does in the background, and let me try and make that font a little larger. Is that a bit more visible up the back?
Yep.
Hands up for yes or awesome. Okay. So on this system, what we're going to see is, if we just go here, PowerShell also has this concept of aliases. So if an actual instruction that you want to perform is too long, you can abbreviate it, and some of those abbreviations are defined by default. So what we're going to use here is get-wmi object, right, tab completion, and we're going to ask it to query a particular class in the WMI repository, so Win32 computer system. So when we do that, we effectively get the information on the local system. It's joined to this corp.contoso domain. It's a virtual machine running on Hyper-V, so the manufacturer's Microsoft Corporation. And you'll see it's given me the computer name and the primary owner. So Anne actually performed I beg your pardon. This is her device because she's logged onto it, so it sets an attribute in Active Directory to say that she's the primary user of this device. Now, as an admin, what I will do is go to our domain controller, because that sounds like a nice enough machine to have privileges on, right? And through here, we're going to try and do the same thing. So first, we're going to run the get-wmi object. Oops. And what I didn't show you was the class. Right? So we have a namespace which exists in a repository, and then there's an instance of that called a class. Win32, let's go computer system. And it tells me about the DC. Right? So effectively, we're still querying local WMI, and that's what WMI command does by default. So what we would do is check the parameters that we have available to us, dash, and then just tab through. And if I expedite this, it'll be dash credential computer name. And we know that Anne's machine is called Win10 client. So the Windows Remote Management listener on Anne's client was pre-configured. That allowed PowerShell to be able to, or WinRM, to be able to pass through. Using this command, on the local machine, we instantiate a remote management query, and that passes through the firewall, gets us the data, and retrieves it, and brings it back to the window here. This is a fairly simple, trivial example, but it's trying to illustrate that concept of how you can go from local management to remote management, and it's all done just in PowerShell. Okay? You can get pretty complex with this if you choose, and we do know, I've written a PowerShell script that's, I think, about 12,000 lines, right? But it's a very custom solution. I probably wouldn't recommend it in most instances.
Which one is this one?
Number 5. Okay. So let's jump into this diagnostics and recovery toolkit. This is part of the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack. It's been around for quite some time, available to customers with software assurance. Dart was one tool that we wanted to pick out. Now remember, we're still talking about the operating system level, which is why we've kind of broken MDOP across a couple of sections through the presentation. So Dart is typically used on the local machine. It provides a whole lot of utilities that enable you to recover a system, remediate a system. Oops, I lost the file, or I deleted the file, I can't find it, or I formatted the hard drive. Please get my file back. It's those kinds of tools, as well as being able to recover a system to being bootable. So there are 3 kind of categories of tools that Dart has. There's the disk and file tools, there are administrative tools, and then there's the recovery tools themselves for recovering an operating system or a file system in most cases. Each of these tools has a very specific function. They're relatively lightweight, which is why they're incorporated within just the Dart image. Now, the key point that I'll point out here, the current version of Dart that exists does not support Windows 10. And the reason for that is Dart is based on the operating system. So when Windows 10 is released, there will be a corresponding update of Dart. because it is inextricably linked to the version of Windows PE, which is effectively what it boots into. So right now, you won't be able to use Dart with Windows 10. However, there will be an update. So Disk Commander, probably one that most may be familiar with, is the System File Checker scan. Basically checks out your file system, ensures that there are no missing blocks or corrupt blocks or bad blocks, and it can also help and try and remediate some of those. In the administrative category, if you like, it's really around being able to manage that computer and recover it in some way. So if you had a corrupt registry, you can repair the registry, you can actually bring it up to a functional level, as well as being able to have a remote connection. That's kind of like the old days, you used to be able to hit F8 and select boot into safe mode with networking. Well, this is even lighter than that, but you still have networking. And then there's the recovery tools. So the Crash Analyzer is a lightweight debugger or dump file analyzer, and we'll be able to pull out as much information from a dump file if the system's unbootable. Locksmith is pretty cool. It's an offline password reset utility for pretty much any local account. It doesn't work with domain accounts. So I'm going to hand over to Heike, who's going to run you through a few of these other sections as well.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about applications. So, of course, there are different kind of applications. We have .exe files, MSI files we can install. I want to go over how we can manage modern apps or universal apps. So we have something, okay, there's another session, of course, from Michael. So the business store. Maybe you have heard about that in the keynote as well, or the last days we announced it and we started to talk about it a little bit more in public as well. So there will be a store, you know the Windows Store already now that we have since Windows 8, where you can download the apps, but you always needed to have a Microsoft account to get access to the store and download the applications. So for companies, there will be a new way with Azure Active Directory, so they can synchronize the first name, the last name, email address to Azure Active Directory, and then grant their users access to the company store through Azure AD credentials. But you also will have a flexible deployment, so online, offline, as well as included in images. That means you can download the applications and then distribute them with your configuration manager, for instance, if you are deploying your software with this technology. You can access the public store with that, but you can also create your own store. So this is a secure store in the online store that is just for your own employees. And you can also upload your own applications to that store so that your employees access a company store that is in the cloud and download only your secure applications from there. So as I said, it can be deployed through the store, mobile device management solution, as well as using System Center Configuration Manager. So there will be support, of course, for small organizations as well as for teacher and classrooms, for instance. That's another big area we are working on. And it's one store. We as administrators, we like it. We can grab everything from there, but also developers, of course, they can develop one application, and it will be available for phones, for laptops, for tablets, for whatever, because it's one Windows 10. And that's the same for your company store. So it will be available on phones, on tablets, on PCs, on any device that runs Windows 10. So the different scenarios, as I mentioned, you have it online. I find it quite interesting, so the new scenario, like the offline scenario, to really grab the files, download them, and put them into your image. So this was not available at Windows 8. So you always needed a Microsoft account and really access everything online. So this is a really nice new scenario that we have with Windows 10. So another way to work with applications is AppV, Application Virtualization. And this is just, if we look at the different, so at the architecture, so we have an application installer that installs the application. We sequence the application. That means you have a basic image that nothing should run on it, like no virus scanner or no update service or anything else. and you install the application. Whilst you install the application, the sequencer captures all the files that gets changed on the operating system, all the registry key and everything that is needed to really run this application. You should then open the application one time so that all the last settings get done and you get an application package. And then you have the option to either deploy this virtual application through Config Manager or through an AppV streaming infrastructure. And on the client side, so on your Windows clients, you have an application AppV client installed. I just want to go quickly through a demo. That was 8. That was not 8. So let's start with the sequencer. So to make it quickly, I just installed the sequencer already, I open it, and you have either the choice to create a new application package or, of course, you can modify one. So let's just create a new virtual application package. Next. So it will warn you, so you should turn off like a Defender, as I said, firewalls or anything that could now start putting some settings in the registry, files on the file system, because this would be all captured with the sequencer now. And you don't want that in the AppV package. You can, of course, modify that afterwards as well. So next. I want a standard application package. So there's also an option to create add-ons, for instance. So with, I think it was AppV 5, we started to implement this grouping thing so that you can have add-ons and just apply them to different other packages instead of building new packages for every add-on that you want. So if you want to sequence add-ons, this is also an option that you can do with the sequencer. So where's the file to the application? I think it's in downloads. It's a word viewer, so quite simple. Next. So let's call it Ignite. Okay, let's go here. I thought I had created it. So, and now it starts the application. So as that what I was saying. So now you start sequencing how this app gets installed, where in which location the ad adds all the settings, all the files, and everything. So I click Continue, and because I've done this before, I think we skip this step now because it just needs a little bit of time to really install the application, and you know how it is, next, 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 finish. I created this package already, and I already copied it over to my application, to my AppV server. And my AppV server is actually here. So the output will be a folder with a couple of files, like the AppV package and some config files. And here on this share is my package. So this is the output of my sequencer. After that, I go to my application virtualization portal and click on Add Package. So I browse through to the package. It should be in UNC name, of course, because otherwise the clients can't reach it. It's already here. You can see it's a file share, add. And so it's not added because I think it's already here. Another version has been published. But this is the process how you add your application to the portal. So after that, it's not published. It's just there. And you need to configure who of your users should have access to it, who should be able to really get it streamed down on their PCs. And that's what we are doing next. We are going to give access to our domain users. So let's click on Corp. Domain It's so tiny. It's here. Grant access. One other thing we can do is, for instance, we can add different shortcuts. So I, for instance, want the user to have a shortcut on the desktop. So let's go and modify the default configuration. You can see shortcuts are here, and this is the desktop icon that has been already added. It's very simple. You can just say, I want to add a new shortcut, and it asks you what you want for which application, where you want to put the icon to, and so on and so on. So this is fairly simple. After that's done, you just click on Publish. So that we see that on the client nothing was there before, I should probably just open it. So I have both. I have a Windows 7 machine as well as a Windows 10 machine here, and both machines should receive this package in about 30 seconds, 40 seconds. What do you guess?
Yeah.
So there is a client that is available as a download, and it's an application management client where you can just check for updates or as well download your AppV package offline. So if you want the user to be available to take the virtualized application with it at home, it needs to be downloaded because probably there's no connection to the streaming server at the moment. Yep. And this is something that a client can do by its own, or you can configure everything via group policies, of course.
Also with, I think it was since AppV 5, the client doesn't actually have an interface. So the interface that we're showing you here is a separate download. Once you download that, then you actually get this interface. Otherwise, the processing is pretty silent in the background.
Yeah, you can't really see anything on the
That's
client,
right.
that's true.
Yeah. But you can use PowerShell to manage the client.
Of course.
Yeah.
You can use PowerShell to manage everything.
Anyway.
So yeah, we just need to wait a little bit until the client gets a notification about a new application that is available. So let's give it a second. So after that, the application should be available also here. And then here is an option later on to really download the application. So you need to install the client as you saw on the slide before. So there was an AppV client. This client needs to be configured with group policies as well, because the client needs to know where's my streaming server. Otherwise, it's like just waiting, or maybe it's not even waiting. But of course, it needs the infrastructure in the background. So usually when it finds something, this motion takes a little longer, like this animation here. But it's not. Give it a little while. So I would say just we leave it like this, and then we move to the next topic because the time is running. I won't touch it, so it will be there, no fake. Give it a moment. So let's go further to the next step. So user profiles, I think we all know what user profiles are, but just a short overview. So of course we have anti-user that stores all the HKey local user settings. We have local and roaming. Some of the settings are machine dependent, some of them are machine independent, and should probably roam with the user. So where the user goes, the user has all the settings like Internet Explorer, desktop settings, icons, whatever you can imagine. And then we have application created content. But also we have user-generated content. And if we think about a common roaming user profile, all of these settings and files and everything gets roamed and gets synchronized to probably a share on your file server. And I remember my time before I started working at Microsoft, I had a roaming user profile as well, and I think it took me like for ages until I got finally signed in and everything. And but with Microsoft, they never really did it, so I always had one machine only, so I never had to change it. Change my settings again on the other system, but of course there are other technologies now that we can use instead of roaming profiles. So one is user experience virtualization. I will go into the demo after we talked about the different ways. User experience virtualization, you can see roams or synchronize all the settings that the user makes for machine-independent applications or settings like desktop or Internet Explorer favorites or word signatures, how you configure the toolbar, anything. But not the user-generated content. For the user-generated content, you can, for instance, use folder redirections so that everything that a user stores in documents is seamlessly already stored somewhere else on a different file server. And then we have offline files, of course. So when the user takes this laptop and goes home, he has also access, of course, to all the settings with UEV or all his folders that files he was working on. So,
most of
yes?
the folder redirection, offline files, roaming profiles, they're really, if I may term it, kind of older technologies now. And what we're seeing now is, most of you are really starting to use OneDrive for Business and SharePoint to be able to store all your content, because that really makes it a lot more accessible. It allows it to have better control centrally, and then to be able to apply all the stuff that Heike will be talking about later on around information protection. So these technologies around offline files, folder redirection, and roaming profiles, we're not actually seeing any net new implementations of these. So it's really migrations away from these into OneDrive for Business and SharePoint.
So yeah, there's OneDrive for Business as well as work folders. So this is another great solution for people that don't have SharePoint. They can use work folders. It's like a home file, home folder, but it's all protected with your company certificate. So in case the user leaves the company or something, you can just simply wipe the content or break the certificate and nobody can access the documents anymore. So this is another great solution, also because the synchronization goes via hopefully SSL, HTTPS, and not, you don't need any connection to your local network like you have to be connected with for offline files in this case. So what was the next? So yeah, the next one was just UEV. Let's have a look how the architecture work and how this, the synchronization, or yeah, the flow works. So you have applications and you can see desktop applications as well as modern apps or universal apps. And the app settings usually on the PC, they get stored in the registry or somewhere on a folder on the server, on the client itself. So then you have an agent installed, the UEV agent on the client, and as soon as the Word application, for instance, this is like the little shaky here, starts, the UEV service checks for new settings or applies the settings that are already synchronized to the local client to the Word application. So this is the difference to roaming profiles. A roaming profile, everything, so when I sign in or when I log on to the machine, everything gets loaded and put on my PC. Even if I don't use all the settings now, because I'm not even going to open Outlook or Word, I just want to use PowerPoint for now, everything gets loaded. And the same is when I sign out, everything gets synchronized again back to the system. And here, this is only when the application opens, the agent looks for Word settings, and it loads the Word settings. So, and then, of course, it's the same way when I close the application, shaky, all the settings get synchronized back. Where to? So on the right side, you can see the local settings package. So the files will be on the local system, of course, because if you want to use all of this offline as well, you can use it. But from this location, it gets synchronized to a settings store that you have configured before. So on the file server, or what you need to implement that is the UEV agent. Templates, there are templates available already for, of course, most of the applications that are out already, like for Office, for Adobe, for kind of other applications. You can create your own template. So if you have an application that people use it and they customize the toolbar or something, just create your own template for that. And you have a settings store. This is where the user settings get synchronized back to. And then you need group policies to configure the UAV agent. Let's have a quick look at that. So in the meantime, my desktop icon is here. So that means my AppV package is now available to my client, so I can open it and I can then start working in Office. So I can read something with Word Viewer, and it has never been installed to the system. It's just virtually streamed now. It gets placed in a virtual, like in the file system as a virtual application, and when I get updates from the server, it's immediately, the next time I run the application, it gets updated. That's quite convenient. So let's go back to UAV. So I already configured everything. I have my client installed, and this is why I have a Windows 10 and a Windows 7 machine, because I think most customers are coming now from Windows 7 and they go to Windows 10. They might want to have the settings on Windows 10 as well as on Windows 7, so this works. Let's have a look. I'm going to open, should I start it on 10 or 7?
7.
7. So I have an Internet Explorer here, and it's default, it's a web page, and I want to change it. I want to customize my Internet Explorer now. Just before I do something that you see, it's the same here. So I haven't pre-configured my 10 machine. You never know. It should be the same. It's Bing and nothing else is there. So I'm going to close this here. So let's change the website. I'm from Munich. Oh, that means error, just that you know.
It's not a new model.
What's up? Come on, show me the nice cars. Okay. I don't want to go to compare. Audi is nice as well. It's probably more. Oh, yeah, it's loading. So okay, they won. I go to change my homepage. So I want this as my only homepage, but I can maybe add this to my favorites. What do you think? Like add BMW arrow message to my favorites. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm closing the browser. And I'm not doing like any synchronization, clicking button something. So I'm just going to my other machine. And as I mentioned earlier on the animation, as soon as I close the app, the settings get synchronized to my setting store. And as soon as I open the application, the agent looks into the settings store and picks out the latest settings. And I should now have Audi on this side as well, exactly as well as a new favorite, which is the arrow message of BMW. So that worked very, very easy without the need of signing out, signing in again. So this will be available in Windows 10 as well. It will be as easy as it was with Windows 7 and Windows 8 to configure UAV settings. So let's move to user data. I will take the next section a little bit from a different approach. I'm going to talk about security with our user data. So I think if we look back a little bit on our protection journey, so of course we already had device protection. So device protection means data on the device. So when the device is stolen or lost, you could implement a device protection like BitLocker, Instant Go, if it was Capital device, or third-party adoption, of course, to really protect the disk or the data on the disk. So with BitLocker, there's also an enterprise solution available to manage all the BitLocker keys. So you have the client, you can configure everything, of course, with group policies. And there were also some self-service portals for the user in case the user couldn't remember the PIN, or it had to, so what was it, this long key.
The BitLocker recovery key.
The BitLocker recovery key, exactly. And then in the background, there were some web services running for the administrator, of course, recovery web services, SQL Server databases to store all the information about the clients and about the keys. And of course, compliant and audit was in this database as well. And you had some reporting services, or you have them, to really figure out if the clients are compliant or not. So there is another session on especially BitLocker and MBAM and all the improvements that we made with the latest version. So this is device protection. So then we have data protection. But this is data protection when something happens. So you can say, I'm sending this email and I'm using information rights management to protect this email. So nobody can forward it, reply to all, or take out the attachment or something. So this was something you did on purpose, and the user had to pick a template to really apply the security to the email. So there are always now Azure Rights Management is also available, so you can have your rights management templates created in the cloud. If you're already using rights management services on premise, there's also a connector, so you don't have to create your templates again and again and again, so they both can talk to each other. And your rights management service can pull down all the templates, and then if you have a file classification infrastructure implemented on the on-premise side as well, you can then apply all those templates to your Exchange, SharePoint, file server, wherever you want. So, but then there were always gaps. Gaps were accidental leaks, or, so I'm sure none of you have ever done that before, like send an email to the wrong person. That happened to not me, of course not. But there, for instance, at Microsoft, we had two Heike Ritter. So I received some of her emails, she received some of my emails, or just because I was quickly sending someone an email, I put the wrong name in. So that happens. If it's still in the same company, that's probably fine. But if the person you're accidentally sending the email to not, so that might probably not the best to do. So there were third-party solutions, of course. Usually they were complicated to implement. They had a different look and feel and a different user experience on different devices. They're like, if you feel like you are inboxed inside a container and you have to leave the container, or you have to leave the application to then open another application and do something else. If you don't want to, like if you do want to do something private. So probably a little bit not really seamless for the user and very native. So what we thought is required is, of course, something that is implemented in the operating system that protects the data in rest, in transit, across all devices. Of course, we also need cross-platform support. It enables wipe and management for the IT, like you can delete the files and you can define specific rules and configurations to this, to this protection. And it should be, all applications should be able to use it. So not only Word and not only Excel, so any line of business application that you have, everything that you install on the box should be able to leverage this technology because it's built into the system. So enterprise data protection protects data, as we heard from our requirements, in rest, and wherever it roams and goes, when you move it to the file, you put it on a USB stick, you place it on a different device, wherever it is. It's Themeless integrated into the system, so there's no switching between containers or apps or something, so you can use any app that you want at the same time. Corporate versus personal data gets separated without the need of the user to do anything. Prevents unauthorized apps from accessing business data, so the app cannot even access your data. So malware, for instance, if you think about that, you probably never configured this unknown application as a trusted or non-trusted application, so it won't be able to access data that was created from trusted apps. IT has fully control of the keys, of course, and the data itself. It can be wiped remotely, and it has a common experience across all Windows devices, and we also do have cross-platform support. There's a session. I see it. So, yes, don't box yourself in. This is what I get, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. How does it work? So, I think you're going to show us a similar thing, like get your device managed, yes. Your enterprise, yep. And this is a similar experience. So the user enrolls the device with MDM or domain join, and then gets synchronized or provisioned all the settings like keys and of course the configuration you want, the policies. Policies can be like those are enterprise applications or network policies. You can say everything that gets stored on my domain.local will be always encrypted. So every file that the user picks from one of the servers that is behind this barrier will be protected. And of course, app restriction policies. Is an app allowed to access your data? Let's have a look at that. Which machine? 6. So, still looking at Audis. Here we go. So what I have prepared here is it's a Windows 10 machine, of course. And I have installed some applications. And I'm trying not to use like a traditional Microsoft application. That's why I have installed all kind of other third-party utilities here to show you that it works not only with Microsoft products. So I have defined some rules that allow my users to create content, of course, from any app, but some apps are enterprise apps. I said those are trusted apps. All of those trusted apps will automatically protect the files. So everything that I create out of those documents, out of those applications will be protected. If you look at my folder here, my document folder, you can see some of the files are green. Those are protected files. And the other files are just not like normal files, and there are private files. So I defined what applications are enterprise applications and not. I have the journal here, the Windows journal. How do you pronounce that in English? Journal?
Journal.
Okay, thank you. And I took some notes of a brainstorming meeting. I'm now going to copy some of the content here. Oh, just that you see, this is the video project JNT, and if I go on File, Save As, you can see it's in my document folder, and it's exactly this file, so it's protected. I'm going to copy some of the content here, and I'm trying to, copy it over. This is what is it? A WordPad. And click on Paste. I get a message. Are you sure? So this is corporate protected content, so maybe you don't want to share it with another application that is not just supposed to be an enterprise application. This works perfectly with all other, like Twitter app, Facebook app, browser if you want. If you don't want to let anyone copy and paste content from Word, PowerPoint, Excel, SQL, whatever, into into a browser window, you can block it. Of course, there will be rules that the user can now click on, no, I want to do it anyways, and it will be reported, and it will be documented, and maybe forwarded to a manager or something. You have maybe social media people, and they really need to copy and paste content out of corporate protected data. But for maybe new employees or people who don't know it better, it's, hey, are you sure? Just think about it. Is this something that should go into this file or file location? So if I go and open, for instance, I have, what is this, Fox? This application, Fox Reader, I can copy and paste it here. I still have it, I think, in my memory and in my clipboard, and that works because Fox Reader was also defined as an enterprise application. So it works, and I'm not closing an app and going out of a container or something, so it just seamlessly works with all of my applications. Of course, there are policies that needs to be configured first. Good.
So we'll jump into some of the enterprise applications very quickly. So Configuration Manager, and this is just a way to look at what Configuration Manager offers you. We've got these four main categories. There's the device management, operating system deployment, which seems to be very consistently used across large enterprises because of the way Configuration Manager scales, asset management and support, and application management capabilities as well. In device management, there are two types. There's enterprise device management, which is effectively the on-premises device management related to what are known as Group 3 clients, or Group 1, or 1, 2, or 3 around the domain join machines or OS X clients and those sorts of devices. And then there's MDM, where it integrates with Microsoft Intune. So that's really, I guess, the bona fide OMA DM-based management solution. To implement this, the way we sort of look at Configuration Manager is that there's this core piece with which you can really not stand up a Configuration Manager infrastructure, and that's really the database, reporting services, and role-based administration. You also need to have a hierarchy to it. Thereafter, you get this next layer that will depend on what kind of capability you're implementing. So for instance, if I were implementing device management, I won't necessarily have a fallback status point. So there's just this kind of onion skin view of Configuration Manager. It does a whole lot of other little things that fit into these categories, but we won't really go into them here today. Really quickly, Exchange Active Sync. Most of you that already receive mail on your mobile devices, EAS was really built around synchronizing mail, contacts, and calendar to mobile devices. That's the stuff it does. Yeah. All right?
He was trying to write it down now in a second.
I was trying to work out what I'd missed. All right, so I'm sure I've missed something, or I've put something in there that was probably done in a previous version of the protocol. But it is available. It's most consistently used through something like Office 365 or Exchange, where that's all you're delivering to the device. But we deliver way more than that now. And so let's kind of compare Windows 8.1 and Windows 10. As I mentioned earlier on, we've invested very heavily to try and meet your business needs. So the blue bars kind of represent the Windows 10, the phone form factor, and the blue the desktop. And you'll see that there's a marked shift in the phone, and an even bigger shift in the desktop between Windows 8.1 and Windows 10. And really, you'll see almost parity between the phone and the desktop as we look to have this consistent manageability across the devices as well. Again, this is kind of for your reference, really, around the life cycle of MDM in Windows 10, and it all starts with that enrollment action. That enrollment today is really the user has to do it because they have their own device, and then there is an explicit manual action. We have some capabilities to try and remediate that, where we can use provisioning to be able to bootstrap directly into an MDM capability. Again, there's another MDM session. So Intune is really the MDM solution that Microsoft has, delivered out of Azure as well. Remember, we spoke about that cloud identity at the beginning when we spoke about the identity capabilities. Well, Microsoft Intune leverages that Active Directory, Azure Active Directory identity, and is then able to provide mobile device management, mobile app management, as well as PC management. So you also have the option to be able to install an Intune agent on a device. But really where we're focusing here is on the OMA-DM capabilities, which is what I guess the standard MDM solutions will use. So let me show you very quickly what that kind of looks like. So we're back. This device has finally completed its cloud domain join. And if I head up to the Windows key, you'll see that our wonderful test user 1 is now enrolled. Is now cloud domain joined. I'll head up to the settings, accounts, work or school, and you'll see there's a connect to workplace. So I put in my details here. And I click sign in. And again, it's going to try and validate those credentials. It should ask me for a password in a little while. And it will basically have it registered with Microsoft Intune, and I will then be able to push policies out to this device. And because I have the multi-factor authentication, so you'll see one of the consistent themes here is something I know, my username and password, and something I have here. And Windows Hello and is something you are, and then Microsoft Passport, it augments that further. So we'll just put in our, and we sign in. So this will basically conduct the enrollment. You won't see it instantaneously in Intune. It takes a little while for the MDM client on the device to be able to process, inventory the device, and then ship that information back to Intune. Once it has reached Intune, then it's pretty much good to go. So,
do you want to do this?
Yeah, sure. Oh, not that one. So let's see if we can kind of get through the, oh, I think we're on the wrong screen. There we go. So one of the key things with Windows 10 is we are doing quality-based releases. For most of you who are signed up for the Windows Insider program, you will see that you are kind of in the hundreds of thousands to the several million category on this bar. So our engineering folks will build and test internally, and they will continue to iterate. When the product hits a particular quality bar, and there's certain metrics that have been met, it will then move out to the next ring, if you like. And that's how it kind of progresses. So you'll see that for all our enterprise customers, you're pretty much way down the end of the quality line. So effectively, you've got hundreds of millions of users who have validated functionality and stability of the operating system before it really gets to the enterprise level. And there are two branches here. There's the current branch for business, which is effectively a periodic release that will be available, and you will be able to upgrade to that. And then there's this long-term servicing branch. It's really kind of like a status quo like you have with Windows 7 today, where there is a fairly long support cycle and ability for you to remain on that operating system. This does not affect security updates. If a security update is required, we'll release it. And so thinking about it as Windows as a service, some points for you to consider, that the long-term servicing branch is really targeted at those mission-critical workloads, a manufacturing system control device, or a device in the back of an ambulance that controls life support systems, for instance. Whereas when we start to look at the current branch for business, that's really more around ensuring that you have the most secure, most up-to-date device that is also providing you with the capabilities that support your business. So there will be more information coming out on this, and the Windows Engineering blog will certainly cover it, as well as being published to the Windows Insider program. But you will also still have 2 ways to control, 3 ways perhaps. You've got Configuration Manager, which integrates with WSUB. That's up here. And then what was announced yesterday, which is the Windows Update for Business. And more information on that is forthcoming. So just to kind of start to summarize on this, we've covered all of these items on this list. And you'll see that the choice that you have is fairly exhaustive. We're still trying to work out which area of Windows really needs to be managed or has a gap right now. Just to kind of put it in a different way, in terms of how much of control do you wish to have, and determining for yourself, control only what you need to be compliant and secure for the organization and for the user as well. Right? We've touched on almost all of these, looking at the BYOD elements where a user can bring their device in, they can enroll it into Intune, and will be managed using your MDM policies, or it could be a domain joined device that you provide and is as controlled as you need it to be with group policies, scripts, and pretty much total control on that device. Configuration Manager, we made a whole lot of announcements yesterday around this. I would encourage you to visit the blog. And also try and get the latest service packs and the tech preview. Pull that down, put it into a lab, and kick its tires with Windows 10. Okay? So hopefully we've been able to kind of show you a raft of technologies. I think we have run a little bit over time, so I do apologize for that. But we did try and pack in as much as we could to cover as many things. There are a few things we haven't touched on. App Locker and group policy. They're all part of that management suite, either most of the time in a domain join scenario. And as you read about Device Guard and some other features in Windows 10, group policy is able to manage them. We're investing in MDM, and you'll effectively have all of the control you still have, but with a greater range of administrative tools that you may require.
And there are sessions for like a
There are sessions for pretty much everything.
Yes, for everything.
All right, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Please do fill out your feedback, and have a good rest of the conference.